serious? People who have slept with their boss for a promotion raise, was it worth it? I slept with my boss. We were all out having drinks and were sharing a cab. She told the cab driver to just drop both of us off at her place and I gladly went with it. I transferred to another department shortly thereafter. Because we both agreed it was weird now. Unbeknownst to me, I was giving a raise and a new title when I transferred. I always thought of it as a reward for being discreet. I had sex with her because she was a hot older woman. The raise I got later was unexpected. I slept with my boss at the time. And we secretly hid our relationship for several months. In the end, he told his superiors that we were together and it was he that ended up getting the promotion and raise. He was taken away from being my direct supervisor. So our relationship could be out in the open. We were married 4 years later. Edit. We were in our very early 20s at the time. I slept with a camp director and she gave me a good job as a camp counselor. I had a higher salary than all the other counselors. Would do it again in a second. Edit. This is a day camp. I slept with my boss and ended up quitting the job before she could give me any sort of promotion. Mostly because we were moving towards having a relationship and I didn't want that power dynamic to muddy it. Currently sleeping with my boss. We work at a bar. He manages and I cocktail waitress. He's working on his mechanical engineering degree, eventually, and looking for a new job. And I just got out of active duty, so this is both a temporary job for us and we'll both be quitting within the next year. Aside from a free meal while on my shift, usually we get 50% off but he just comps it. I haven't really gotten extra benefits. Obviously I'm only dating him for the free meals. And pen 15. Been dating for 3 months now. Edit. I told him about the thread. This was the conversation that came of it. Imgur.com. When I was just 18 I had just come out of high school. And I desperately needed a job. I was able to get a job that pays $12 an hour at some guy's small business. The catch is I had to sleep with him. That money was great. But it was really awkward whenever I saw him. I needed the money though. So I would do it again. Edit. I only had to sleep with him once. It is not. 2 years ago. The guys around my cubicle were borderline sexually harassing me. I didn't want to bring it up with HR because I made that mistake with another company and that's a whole mess of drama I don't want to deal with again. I went to my manager's office, hinting that my co-workers are pushing me to the point of quitting. He brings up a open position that pays an extra $75k per year that will have its own office and I can stay there secluded for most of the day. The way he looked at me, I knew what he was hinting at. I asked him when he wants to talk about it. He says he'll pay for a motel and we'll both get off 2 hours before work ends. Nothing straightforward was said. I couldn't even text my husband for the rest of the day. I arrived and we were there for around an hour. No one ever got suspicious afterwards. Was it worth it? No. The next morning, I realized something very important. I didn't need that extra money. I could have just quit and found another job. Now I feel like an outcast in my family. A person who would sell out love for money. I convinced my husband to put the extra money into our kids' college fund for a few years. And then until a vacation account for when they are in their late teens and we can go on an ice cruise. Possible have them bring their girlfriends or boyfriends. I'm not spending a dime of that money on me. And I know that's not enough to make up for what I did. I slept with my boss. Got a raise. And now I'm married to him. It was a good life choice. I slept with him because I had been attracted to him for years. I continued to advance despite our forbidden encounters based on my quality of work. Not having slept with him. She wasn't all that bad looking. I didn't get a raise but it got her so far off my back because she was afraid of the consequences. She hated me before. She was terrified of me after the fact. It was beautiful. I didn't do anything for the rest of the summer. Also, it helped that I was 17 and she 32. Edit. Holy shit, thanks for the karma guys. Boss here in education. I slept with one of my workers. Eventually it moved to a serious relationship and I helped him get a job at his dream engineering firm. Now we're planning on getting married, no regrets. Best decision of my life. Slept with my boss. She wasn't hot but cute and I had never been with a curvy girl before. We left a company award ceremony and had a long drive back to our branch too. 1/2 hours. Well, long story short, she ended up giving me roadhead and we pulled over to duck. It was fun and we continued our relationship for about 6 months. It ended when she was promoted to regional manager because she was always traveling to different branches. Never got a raise nor a new position. I got to brag to my buddies though. Kinda relevant. I had an FWB who was the manager at a store that opened in our town. And I think that had something to do with me getting hired, no experience whatsoever. It was generally a nice experience. I got a ton of special treatment and a couple free lunches. It also didn't hurt that he was in the closet. And I'm sure he appreciated my discretion. When I was 18 I was part-time running food at a really high-end Italian restaurant. After shifts ended everyone went to the bar next door and got it faced every night. One of the managers was a 24-year-old blonde that I really had a thing for. After a night at the bar we were loaded and she said I could crash at her place. So I went and one thing led to another. We ducked and I took a cab home. The next weekend when I had shifts the managers called me in because they fired the bartender and because I'm very hardworking that I'm going to fill his position. Maybe not an office promotion story but I was making a couple hundred more a night bartending than bussing. TL. Doctor, I banged a manager and started making more at my part-time job. Edit. For everyone losing their marbles because I wasn't 21. I live in Canada so 18 is the legal drinking age. The tips were amazing. On a good night I could clear a couple hundred because I only worked there Fridays and Saturdays. Edit 2. I live in Alberta so it's 18 here. I'm drunk right now, can confirm. I joke that I fired my ex-wife so I could duck her. She ducked me in the end. And half the town. I'm sad. Comma. Pretty awesome. She sat on my face. And I got $3 more an hour to lifeguard the local pool. Best summer job I ever had. Edit. Fassa sitting got me a $3 raise and Reddit gold. Boom. Every lifeguarding job I've ever worked. Everyone was sleeping with everyone else. Bosses included. Lifeguards are just pretty as duck. To sum up this thread, guys, sleep with your female bosses. Get raises, or don't. You got laid. Who cares? No problems. Girls, marry your boss or change jobs. Sometimes both. I was the boss sleeping with my employee. She was a very mediocre employee to begin with. Raging alcoholic. Would come to work looking like hell with black eyes and wet hair. Never on time. After we started sleeping together I think she developed the attitude that she had to start performing better at work or it would be obvious there was something going on when she didn't get fired. Within a few weeks she's a model employee. Probably far better than even I was. She received several small lateral promotions within a few months. One I was involved in and one I was not. We ended up dating for over a year while I was still her boss before we both left the business. We both started looking for other employment because of our relationship and found better jobs with better pay. A few years later we are still together and now living together and engaged. I slept with my boss. Granted, we had to file a form to claim we were in a close personal relationship first. He tried to help me get hired elsewhere so it wouldn't be such a conflict. Then he explained what being in that job for 20 years was like. The politics of it all. How everyone hates it after a few years and burns out. So I quit the job and now I'm going for a law degree. Still with him over a year later and couldn't be any happier if I tried. And I think he feels the same. Best decision of my life. I can't even fathom my life without him. He was worth all the stigma and hours changes and pay lost for taking time off to be with him. I do some freelance work as a reporter and actually just agreed to a sexual relationship with an editor of a local newspaper I really want to write for. He's 27 years my senior, but the tabooness of it is enticing and exciting. And the obvious advantages work-wise that come with it won't be too shabby either. Kinda feel just a little bit guilty about it, but hey, he's like a George Clooney in the town I live in, so why not? I had sex with my manager so I could become a full-time waitress. When I started working at my current job, I was a hostess. Eventually I was able to wait tables part-time, but still. Most of my hours were for shifts as a hostess, which only paid minimum wage. I kept pestering the GM and AMs to be made a full-time waitress, but there just weren't enough shifts at the time. Eventually my GM announced that he would be leaving to open another restaurant in another state, not part of our small chain, completely different franchise. He ended up taking me aside to tell me that he really wanted to make sure I was promoted to full-time server before he left. I was thrilled. He asked if I'd like to talk about it with him at his house that night. I said absolutely. When I got to his place, I realized right away that there was a total quid pro quo type of thing in the works. Yes. He'd make sure I officially became a full-time waitress. He promised that while stroking my thigh, though. And that's when I realized what was happening. Yes. I did it. Keep in mind, I never felt threatened or pressured. I wanted the promotion. He wanted sex. And I was okay with that. Did it make me feel a little dirty? Definitely. But it was actually a really fun night that I don't regret. Was it worth it? Absolutely. At the time I was barely able to pay my bills. I was literally living paycheck to paycheck. In the 2+ years since, I've managed to save a pretty decent amount of money. When it's not killing me, I like the work too. But if I'd had to wait for that promotion, especially after that GM left, it would have probably been months before I became a full-time waitress. There's no way I would have been able to manage that, and I'd have probably ended up getting a different job. So yeah, I was happy with the results. When I was 16, I worked at MC Donald's. I ended up secretly dating 2 IC and got pay raises, more breaks, and could choose my hours roles, which was pretty sweet. Wasn't intentional though. Yeah. When I was young, she was a sub from the downtown branch. Introduced me to some terrible music. Treated me so well in bed. I guess I had it easy after that. But we served ice cream. It was already super basic. Not a boss, but one of my professors at my university. She was in her late 30s, 40, and I was 21-22. It was her first year at the school and was having a rough time meeting people. She was having car troubles, so I offered to help her out while I was visiting during her office hours. She offered to feed me dinner, and I was more than happy. We started drinking and ended up in bed. We had a casual relationship for most of the year until I unfortunately had to move after graduating. When finals came around, she told me not to worry about the final 15-page research paper. Hell yeah. But to be completely fair, I was a really good student with a solid A in her class before we started hooking up. When I was in high school, I worked at a pretty large movie theater in my area. It was a lot like a restaurant in the sense that everyone is ducking everyone and partying most nights together. We had a very cute manager who was probably about 30ish and pretty strict on most of the guys who worked there. Mainly because we were little high school sheetheads that thought we were the cat's pajamas. Anyway, I hooked up with her after a party and it was great. We became FWBs, and since she was in charge of the time clock, she would often clock me in a couple hours early on slow days before I showed up, so I was getting paid full-time 40-hour weeks while only working about 20 hours. She would also have me stay late to clean up after late shows, and we would duck in the regional manager's office since it was the only one without cameras. And because the regional manager was a fear-mongering itch, I had a summer job working for the local government. I worked in a department filled with stereotypical middle-aged office women. You know the type. They shower in JCPenney perfume while caking on as much makeup as they can like it's some sort of competition. Then they come into work for an hour or two so they can gossip and eat the rest of the day. Anyways, I was basically told to file random sheet while they asked me about my life and what I did outside of work. but all weird and creepy. Like they would ask me about my weekend on Wednesdays. So I never knew if they were talking about the previous weekend or the one coming up. Then the not so subtle queries about my sex life would come up randomly. I usually deflected these pretty well. Yet there was this one lady who happened to be the boss of the department who was not really subtle at all. She started hitting on me in the most awkward ways possible. Keep in mind I was 18 and looked 14. And this was a summer job. So there was no room for advancement or raise. Close to the end of the summer she flat out asked if I wanted to have sex with her for a recommendation and a raise if I came back next summer. You get a raise every year you come back. I wasn't that stupid. I did not do it. Slept with my boss when I was 17 and she was 24. No forethought to promotion or a raise. But just because she was an older woman. Sexy and I was crap with women at that time. It was all good in the end. Happened a couple of times. I got privileges like the hours I wanted at work and in the sections I wanted as well as a side benefit. Left the job when I went to university and all was good. I would do it again most likely but not for promotion or advancement but just because it was good fun. Have slept with a coworker a couple of times. I would say that was more problematic than with my boss. I must admit there are bosses I've had that I would have liked to have slept with. Not for promotion or a raise but because there is something very attractive about a woman in power. My mother slept with her boss. Married him. Started her own company and is now a millionaire. Truth story. Think it was worth it for her. You're the fortunate one. Millionaire family and you didn't have to duck your dad. Too bad this happened after I was out of the house. Stepdad. Best part. He bought her bobs as a friend before they started ducking. Well, I slept with one of my bosses when I was in high school working at Wendy's. But it was just because she was hot and gave me vodka. She made the schedule so we always closed together. Best nights ever. Was doing a work experience program back in high school when I was about 17. Working at a golf course owned by a cute Asian lady. She spoke perfect English. Was in her early 30s and owned the entire golf course. Including also homes that were built around it. For the remainder of the program. I was basically paid to clean up the golf course every once in a while. Take her awesome Hummer out to get it cleaned, pick up coffee, donuts. Whatever. Then come back and bone her for the remainder of the day. She lived in a suite above the public lodge. I still work there in the summers. And enjoy most the same benefits. I am 25. I will freely admit that I slept with my supervisor from work. We spent a lot of time working together and in my career. Which involves about 50% field work. It's hard to meet guys from outside the job. So I met this great guy who was extremely interesting. Had hobbies he was passionate about. And he just happened to be the person I report to. One night he asked me if I wanted to go rock climbing with him and so that became our thing a few nights a week. A few weeks later I absolutely starving but was too tired to cook dinner, so as a joke I asked what he was going to make me that evening and he took me up on the offer and cooked some amazing food. And then afterwards he showed me an amazing night. Then an amazing week. Then amazing months. We split up because I had to move away with work. So I didn't get a promotion or a raise but I was kept on for the entire duration of the project as one of 3 geologists from an original 12. I don't think it was because I was sleeping with him, not my boss. Just a supervisor, because my productivity rates were higher than anyone else's. The advantage I got from sleeping with him is that when I was out of work, he was asking around all his contacts to try and find me something. It's nice to have someone helping me out occasionally.